like I said, you follow comics a little bit closer than I do, but I do know that there's been talk that it's been struggling basically since the speculator bubble burst in the 90s, which I was around for. That was kind of the heyday of my own comic collecting, was sort of the late 90s. And ever since then, it's kind of like you get the impression that it's been just kind of limping along.
Right.
And one certainly would naturally expect that the movies and everything, right, with so much popularity, I mean, even ones that most people think are mediocre, like Captain Marvel, pulled out $1 billion just by strength of the brand.
Right.
And but it's not translating into comic sales.
Yeah, and I honestly think Marvel made a big mistake. And one thing that's sustaining Marvel is Marvel Entertainment was very smart because they just tied everything together. Even before the Disney acquisition, they tied everything with Marvel Entertainment. So like if the films were weak, the comics could sustain them. If the comics are weak, the films could sustain them.
Mm-hmm.
But they did make a very calculated risk that went all wrong. Whenever the movies premiered and they introduced kind of the movie version of Iron Man and Black Widow, your first thought is, okay, the comics have to match up a little bit, right? We don't want it to be exactly like the movies, otherwise people just be tired of the same. But they need to at least have like the same members. And they did do that with Guardians of the Galaxy. But with everything else, they changed up the roster incredibly. That was when, of course, they brought in Lady Thor. They brought in Ironheart because Captain Marvel killed Tony Stark at the end of Civil War II. Oh. It was at first there was this debate whether he was actually in a coma or if he was dead, but they actually did confirm last month that he is in fact dead. The current Tony Stark is an android. So built specifically by Tony Stark before his demise to battle Ultron, is my understanding.
Okay.
And but anyway, so they kind of messed that up, and then they tried to recover because they got Jason Aaron, who had a really successful run on the Hulk in the early 2000s and Ultimate Captain America, and so they brought him back to do the Avengers. He had a great start, and about issue, I would say 18. He did this flashback where he did Avengers 1 million BC, and it was completely a bonkers story arc. It made me lose interest.
I remember hearing about it.
Yes, yeah. It was like Odin, the original Phoenix, the original Iron Fist, who of course is a woman, and the original Black Panther, and all these other like prehistoric, a Ghost Rider who has a woolly mammoth. And
okay, there's a part of me that really wants to see that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that guy was actually pretty cool. The Ghost Rider with the woolly mammoth was actually the coolest of those characters.
That'd be the coolest imagery.